Number 10. Sealbach Hilton. It's said at the Sealbach Hilton, if you take an elevator, a mysterious woman may greet you. According to the Historic Hotels of America website, in 1987, a chef working in the hotel saw a woman with dark hair wearing a long blue dress walk into an elevator with the doors still closed. Moments later, a housekeeper on another floor saw the same woman get into the elevator with closed doors. Now, who is this woman? Well, they think they have a theory. A 1936 newspaper report said a woman learned of her husband's death in an automobile accident as she waited for him at the hotel. So upset by the news, she jumped to her death in the number 3 elevator. She was also reported to have been seen wearing a long blue chiffon dress. So is this the mystery lady? I think so. Number 9. GaGa Lake Amusement Park. What once was the world's largest theme park is now an overgrown land of decaying roller coasters, empty concession stands, and abandoned ticket booths. In 1925, the Big Dipper roller coaster was built and it was an absolute hit. At the time, it was the largest coaster ever built, but soon tragedy struck. In 1942, the park was hit by a tornado, 6 people were injured, and the park experienced a lot of structural damages that cost around $1,000. Further tragedy struck in 1952 when a massive fire engulfed parts of the park, destroying many key features of the park, including the famous dance hall, the theater, the roller rink, and the bowling alley, with damages amounting to $500,000. From 2000 to 2004, the park was expanded and became Six Flags Ohio, and from 2004 to 2007, it became known as GaGa Lake again under the ownership of Cedar Fair. But on September 21st, 2007, Cedar Fair announced the park would not be reopening, and it has been abandoned ever since. The only thing left standing at the former amusement park is the Big Dipper roller coaster, and with that much tragedy there, it's no wonder this place is haunted. Number 8. The Phantom Car on Route 40 to Englewood. In the 1950s, people would be driving along the highway and see a green-tinged lit-up skeleton supposedly driving a car on Route 40. At least 5 stories of the Phantom Traveler have been reported to the local state highway patrol, many claiming the Phantom driver seemed to be challenging truck drivers to play chicken along the narrow and dangerous stretches of the highway. The Phantom allegedly wrote a letter to Sheriff J. Arthur Sherman of Clark County, daring the sheriff to chase him. Many think it's just a prankster, perhaps someone who is mentally ill, but regardless, this is still extremely creepy. Number 7. Wittenberg University. Historic Wittenberg University, chartered in 1845, has its share of spine-chilling tales, most notably one about a ghostly horse. The top floor of Myers Hall at Wittenberg University was used as a hospital for Civil War soldiers. Legend has it that a general, realizing he was about to die, requested that his faithful horse be brought to him. After saying goodbye to his companion, the general died, but the horse would not leave his side and was shot by soldiers. It's said that the sound of hoofbeats and neighing of the horse searching for its master can still be heard on the campus, which is like so cute but so sad, and a ghost horse sounds pretty cool to me. I mean, come on. Number 6. Buckeye Charm. Buckeye Charm, a boutique owned by Jonah Powell, was once featured on the Travel Channel's paranormal investigation show Ghost Nation because it was so haunted. The property was built in 1877 as St. Augustine's Catholic Church. In 1976, the church was sold to become a commercial building. Now, during the filming, a loud EVP, electronic voice phenomenon recording was captured in the building, the words "Hallowed be thy name." The crew was concerned that the voice was a staged prank, Jonah recalled, because it was so loud and so clear, and they've had times in the past where people have tried to trick them or do something. So they had their crew shut down, turn on the lights, stop what they were doing, and search for speakers just to make sure it wasn't something that we were pulling over them. The ghost hunters suspected that a disgraced priest may be behind the scratches, bizarre apparitions, and the EVPs. Number 5. Waynesville Union Schoolhouse. Waynesville Union Schoolhouse was built in 1891 and is currently used for storage by the American Legion Hall. After the newer school was built up the hill, they shut it down and put the town library on the first floor. In the basement, the American Legion had their bar where all the guys went. It was the only place in town where you could drink, and eventually they built a newer building over here, so the building is just sitting there. Nobody can decide what to do about it, how to save it or tear it down, said a townsperson. Since the place has heard stories about strange happenings in the basement, Lee Allen, a local paranormal investigator, was consulted. Lee brought a psychic from from Columbus and she knew nothing about this town. A group was in the building with some of the people from the American Legion and Lee's team, and all of a sudden the psychic said, "There's some men here that don't want you ladies here in the basement at all in their Legion Hall. They want you to leave." Now the women knew it was a guy's place, but they didn't pay too much attention to what the psychic said until she said, "No, they're really serious. They want you to leave. This is not a place for ladies." Then a ghost touched one of the women's shoulders and they screamed. The psychic said their names are Ralph and Carl and they really seriously want you to leave. So they left. And I mean, if a ghost tells you to leave, you probably should. Later, the woman who had to leave said she told the story to a friend who grew up on the corner close to the American Legion and specifically mentioned Ralph and Carl. She said to me, "You're kidding me. Ralph Smith and Carl Siffer spend every day up there in the basement at the bar." Eventually, she heard Carl's wife say that if he was any place in town, that's where he'd be. Number 4. PostToown Elementary School. PostToown Elementary School was built in the 1930s and served as a place of education until the year 2000. It's a building in rural Ohio that is now known more for sightings of apparitions and spirits within its walls than it is for exams and detentions. It's believed that the reason for the hauntings could be linked to 2 separate train incidents in 1891 and 1910 that claimed 30 lives. Without a nearby hospital, the field where the school was built became a triage center. The theory is the spirits of those who died in the accident still remain on the land. Daryl Wisman, a former teacher who made Pottstown Elementary his home, told WCPO in 2016, "We'll hear a desk being dragged across the floor above us. We'll hear little kids' footsteps. I've heard voices with my own ears when nobody is here but me and my wife. I just can't explain it." Paranormal investigators have been called in, and the building is also used for community events. According to Daryl, most leave the school having experienced something strange. He says the school's motto is, "When you leave, you believe," and that honestly sounds perfect because that sounds terrifying. Especially hearing students' footsteps and voices, that is a no from me. Number 3. Helltown. Founded in 1806, Boston Village, aka Helltown's original claim to fame was its standing as the oldest village in Summit County. Boston's relatively uneventful life took a turn for the worse in 1974 when the National Park Service decided that Boston Township would be the new home for a new national park and began buying the properties of its longtime residents. The empty houses were boarded up and adorned with U.S. no trespassing signs. But then the government quickly fell behind on its plan to create the park and the village sat neglected. The hellish aura of the area only continued to grow when rangers visiting the site became ill and covered in rashes. It was soon discovered the dump was highly polluted with toxic chemicals improperly disposed of. Also, in the village there is a church which is said to have been built by Satanists complete with upside down crosses. There's an abandoned bus that is said to be the host to lingering ghosts, and maybe the most outlandish of all, there is talk of mutants who were created by the chemical spill, including a monstrous snake known as the Palencia python, so I would never want to visit there. No. Number 2. Dayton Masonic Temple. The Dayton Masonic Temple was constructed between 1925 and 1928 and it has wonderful architecture. A woman said she went for a tour there led by a man named George. "I sat down in a chair for a little bit, he scooped me up by the elbow and led me along," she recalled, saying that he guided her to a photo of Masonic's graduation classes over the years. "He directed me to a specific year and there he was in the picture. He was a jolly, portly gentleman." After the tour, she spoke with some Masonic officials who had brought her there to take her on the tour. One official in particular asked her stern questions about the areas she had toured. She mentioned the man, George, and the photo. The skeptical official asked her to show him the picture. "When we got to the picture, he turned pale," she said. "He said, 'That's the guy I see around here all the time.'" So yeah, she got a tour from a ghost. And honestly, that's pretty cool because I'm sure he gave her some inside information about it all, but that's kind of spooky. And coming in at number 1 is Victoria Theatre. Victoria Theatre is 150 years old and there have been many sinister events there. For example, the story of a touring actress in the early 1900s who went to her dressing room to change for the next scene and never came out of the room. No trace of her was found, though fewer and fewer actors would use that dressing room, with reports that some would look into the mirror and see her face staring back again. In the 1950s, a man ended his life in the theater by wedging a knife into a seat in front front of him and throwing himself upon it. When the curtains around the left exit door are pulled, some people claim to see his face. Staff members through the years have said that they've heard strange noises like rustling of satin or suddenly smelt the scent of roses in the air. Others are said to have seen the ghost of the Victoria's founder when they're alone in the building. Diane Schofler-Warren, Victoria's spokeswoman, said that many of the historical theater's longtime volunteers and staff like to blame these strange occurrences on Miss Vicky, who was not a real person. Every theater has its legends, such as the legend you don't say Macbeth in a theater or the legend of the ghost light in the theater, she said. The ghost stories are particularly popular with the Victoria's volunteers, but as we all know, 99% of the time, you're not going to the theater to get goosebumps from ghosts, but rather from the fabulous performances. I don't know though, that sounds pretty terrifying to me.
Alright, so starting off at our 10th spot, we have the Phantom Kangaroo. Okay, I know it doesn't sound too scary, like a cute little kangaroo, how could it be scary? Well, this one definitely is. So people have described this kangaroo as being 3.5 to 5.5 feet tall, with glowing eyes and supernatural powers. It is said that it can vanish into thin air and can brutally murder local animals. Now, people have claimed to see this phantom kangaroo all throughout Minnesota, but the most recorded sightings were in Coon Rapids. People have said that they have seen this creature rummaging through their trash or even killing pets. People who have seen it have called it a big bunny, but then they would get scared when it disappeared right in front of their eyes. Coming in at number 9, we have the Dogman. This is another creature that has been reported in different regions of Minnesota. So in 2009, a man encountered this cryptid. He was driving along a country road when he spotted some deer. He pulled over and was watching the deer when he spotted what he referred to as a Dogman. He said that this creature was 7 feet tall, 2-legged, and had big, long hands with opposable thumbs. He also said that this creature had a long snout with broad shoulders and muscular thighs. He was covered in dark brown fur. So maybe werewolves are real and this is a version of one. What do you think? Now, thankfully, this creature did not attack this man. They made eye contact, and as soon as they did, the man drove away. Smart thinking. In our 8th spot, we have Peppe the lake monster. Now, this lake monster is thought to be similar to Nessie the Loch Ness monster. In fact, maybe they're related, who knows? Well, Peppe is a massive snake-like creature with a long neck who lives in Lake Pepin. There have been various sightings throughout the 18th and 1900s. People who have seen it have said that it looks like something between the size of an elephant and a rhino and has smooth gray skin. They also said that it can snatch a flying bird right out of the air. Now, Peppe has been considered harmless as there have been no reports of it causing any harm to citizens. In fact, some individuals have gone diving in hopes to see this creature. There is currently a $50,000 reward for anyone who can prove that Peppe is indeed real. So time to put those Photoshop skills to the test. Or maybe it is real and just he's gone into hiding or something. Moving on, at number 7 we have the hairy man of Vergas Trail. Maybe you should think twice before going on a nice little hike in Minnesota. So apparently there have been sightings of a giant hairy man type creature lurking this trail. This creature is supposed to be 8 feet tall with a musty odor. Honestly, I don't know who got close enough to smell this creature. I feel like if it approached me, smelling it would be the last thing on my mind. This creature is also supposed to be very aggressive. A man by the name of Kan Zitzau apparently encountered this creature while driving in the woods. He claimed that this creature jumped on his car and started smashing the hood. Apparently, there are also reports of brutal animal attackings from this creature. So what do you think? You down to come hiking with me? In our 6th spot, we have the Nemic Sanitarium. Seriously, the name of this place literally has nope in it. If that's not a hint to not go there, then I don't know what is. Now, when people hear the word sanitarium, they often associate it with an insane asylum. However, this was not the case. The Nemic Sanitarium was a home for the ill and elderly. In 1912, it was home to thousands of patients with tuberculosis. Many of them died, and as a result, people claim that their spirits still roam the halls. Apparently, if you go there, then you can hear some of the spirits of people moaning in pain. Now, this legend also states that there is a 9-year-old girl that lurks around the sanitarium. People don't know who this girl is, but there have been reports of people hearing her giggle, or even of her appearing in photographs that they have taken of the empty hallways. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Bertha Maynard. Now, legend states that Bertha was accused of being a witch in the late 1800s. It is now said that she haunts her gravesite. People have reported seeing her apparition near her grave, or even hearing her whispers and cries. They even claim that her grave would move around or that her headstone would just disappear. Now, one individual reported his encounter with the ghost. He said that he was just chilling in his car with his lady friend by the grave. He states that out of nowhere, his radio went all staticky and the car's antenna started moving rapidly, despite there being no wind. He believes that Bertha was trying to communicate with him. The legend also describes an event involving some teen kids in Bertha's grave. Apparently, these kids vandalized her headstone, and shortly after, one of the kids' parents passed away unexpectedly. They believed that this was Bertha's revenge. Coming in at number 4, we have the ghost clown. Now, what's scarier than a clown? A ghost clown. So apparently this ghost clown can be seen along the trail of Lake Almagne. There you go, another reason why we just shouldn't go hiking. Legend has it that this clown just stands and stares at you as you walk the trail. Legend has it that he doesn't want you walking this trail, so he will stalk and stare at you until you leave. They also claim to have seen this clown's apparition appear and then disappear randomly, or have even seen weird shadowy figures darting in and out of the trees. But my question is, who is this ghost clown man? What happened in the forest, and why is the ghost dressed like a clown? Or maybe Pennywise has found a new hiding spot. Who knows? In our third spot, we have Duluth's East Little Theater. This next urban legend is quite an interesting one. Now, apparently a drama director died in this theater after falling off the balcony. Before his death, he was in the midst of writing a play. However, because of this accident, he was never able to finish it. Now, legend has it that one day his script mysteriously appeared on an English teacher's desk. Attached to the script was a note written on an old stationery that read, "Please perform this." And then it was signed by him with the initials RC. Now, they never did end up performing this piece, for obvious reasons. I mean, that must have been terrifying. But drama students say that they hear weird noises in the theater and sometimes feel a cold presence. Coming in at number 2, we have the Wendigo. Now, apparently the Wendigo has been seen in forests of colder regions like Minnesota and Canada. Dang it, why does it have to be in Canada too? So, the Wendigo is a giant creature that can be up to 15 feet tall. They are skinny and often have antlers coming out of their head. Now, there have been several reports of this creature being seen in forests all throughout Minnesota. People believe that this creature evolved from a lost hunter. They claim that his hunger and the extreme cold weather drove him to cannibalism. Wendigos are then said to hunt down and eat humans. Wendigos look terrifying. Like, imagine being a hunter and seeing the antlers from behind a tree and hoping you're gonna catch a deer, and then next thing you know, it's this gigantic creature hunting you. Spooky. No thank you. And in our number 1 spot, we have the UFO attacks. So there are UFO sightings in every city basically. Anything in the sky that looks a bit odd is automatically claimed as a UFO, and people believe it too. Even if it was reported by old Mr. Jenkins who wasn't even wearing his glasses. So in August of 1979, a deputy by the name of Val Johnson suffered an attack from what he claims was a UFO. So this deputy was in the Marshall County when he saw a strange light on the road ahead of him. He drove towards the light when all of a sudden it completely filled his car and blinded him. Half an hour later, he woke up in a ditch. He had welder burns on his eyes, and the time on his wristwatch and dashboard clock was off. His car had a smashed headlight and his antenna was bent. Police have no explanation as to what happened, and since then, this has become a well-known urban legend. Let me know what you think of this one in the comments below. Do you believe in aliens?
Number 10. Malibar Farm. Malibar Farm was built in 1939 by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Louis Bromfield and was his home until his death in 1956. But before it was built, another family lived there in the 19th century. Staley Road, a challenged young woman who lived there with her family, developed a romantic fixation on a neighborhood boy. When Staley's family told her to stop claiming the boy as her fiance, she mixed rat poison in their porridge. Her father and and brother died, but her mother survived. At her trial, Sealey couldn't understand why her parents didn't come to see her. After all, she said, the rats always came back after her daddy fed them rat poison in the barn. Afterwards, she went on and lived with her mother, whom, yes, she tried to kill, but then Sealey poisoned her again, and this time it worked. At age 23, Sealey stood trial truly alone, but was found not guilty by reason of insanity and sent to a state hospital. She lived out the rest of her life in an insane asylum, and since then the house has been haunted. One visitor saw a woman dressed like Staley Road outside the house. People have seen lights flicker, felt a phantom cat, disembodied voices are heard, and there's an overall eerie feeling on the property. Yeah. No kidding. Number 9. Beaver Creek State Park. Although this park is beautiful during the day, it has a darker side at night. A portion of the park was once part of a canal system from the early 1800s. There are 2 locks that are said to be haunted. Jake's Lock is said to be named after a former canal worker who was struck by lightning while walking across the top of the lock. He died instantly, but some claim that on certain nights, especially stormy ones, Jake returns with his ghostly lantern to continue his evening's work. Spooky. Nearby, Gretchen's Lock is said to be haunted by the ghost of a canal worker's daughter. Legend has it her father put her coffin inside the lock until he could load her body onto a ship headed for their homeland. But when the coffin was loaded onto a ship bound for home, the ship was lost at sea and didn't make it. Gretchen, pleading to rejoin her mother, reportedly makes an appearance at the lock every year on the anniversary of her death, which is just very sad. Number 8. The Wandle House. The Wandle House was constructed in 1916 by the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railway with funds contributed by railroaders. The Brewster Railroad YMCA featured 62 dormitory rooms used by the railroad workers, a restaurant, movie theater, and bowling alley. Today, the building is home to the Historical Society and houses memorabilia from baseball team photos, class pictures from Beach City and Brewster schools, railroad memorabilia and equipment, payroll records, and military uniforms. It's filled with tons of history, so those from the past like to visit. While there, you might come across Teresa, who worked in the eatery around the 1940s and 50s. People have also reported hearing noises, seeing doorknobs turning on their own, and dark figures. And even one time, someone who was doing work in the basement of the building watched a person walk through a wall. Let me just say, I've seen a ghost walk through a wall before too, and it's creepy, so it's not something I'd like to see again. Number 7. Crybaby Bridge. Locals say if you stand on the Alliance Area Bridge at night, the sound of crying can be heard. Some say that mothers who did not want their sons or daughters during the baby boom would toss them from the bridge into the river below in the dark of the night. Others believe the cries stem from members of a cult kidnapping locals and ending their lives as part of their secret ritual. And finally, some say ghostly cries stem from a distraught mother who lost it after her daughter would not stop crying. In desperation, she tossed her over the bridge to her death, and upon realizing what she had done, the woman reportedly drove off the bridge her own life. This is all around sad and creepy, but if I heard crying noises without anyone around and on a bridge nonetheless, I would be terrified. Number 6. Old Chestnut Grove Cemetery. The story goes a woman accused of witchcraft was executed and buried at the cemetery. The townsfolk did not erect a marker, but instead built an iron fence around her grave, which was next to an old tree. An indentation next to the tree inside the fence marks her grave, and it's said that bad things will happen to those who get close to her grave. Another variation of the story says that several witches were executed and buried here, and their ghosts continue to haunt this area, which does not shock me. Not only did this happen, but on December 29, 1876, the number 5 Pacific Express was traveling over a high bridge, carrying approximately 159 passengers and crew when the bridge collapsed. It sent the train and the people on it into the ravine below, and 92 people died. Many were burned alive while trapped inside the crushed cars and are buried in a mass grave at this cemetery. Due to this, people have seen ghosts of the passengers, and unexplained voices on tape have been recorded. reported. Number 5. Salon Public Library. Let me just say there's more than books in this building. Before it was a library, it was a house, and former residents Clara Baldwin Barrick and Annie Baldwin both died in the home. Clara lived in the home from 1895 to 1909, and her daughter-in-law Annie died in the home in 1931. This might explain why this place is haunted. Some visitors have heard footsteps or smelt an unfamiliar perfume. Employees get a chill with no explanation in the outreach room located in the basement of the former home. A patron once claimed to have been pushed by an apparition while in the library, and a security camera in the library caught the elevator traveling to the 3rd floor at 3 a.m. The doors opened and a bright light could be seen, and the phenomena has been caught on tape several times, and there is no explanation, and that is just like an immediate no. Director Sherry Brown, who has worked at the library since 1979, said she was working in her office, a former bedroom of the home, after the library closed when she thought she saw an employee walk past her office door. She yelled out but got no answer. When she investigated, she found no one. Paranormal investigators have conducted research in the library and have gotten responses from the ghosts during electronic voice phenomenon sessions, and if you thought libraries were boring, let me just say this one definitely isn't. Number 4. Lock 4 Park. An incident occurred here in 1857 which has resulted in the park being haunted. A canal worker, whom some say was the lock tender, may have been angry about the potential of work being shut down and wanted revenge. The angry worker doused his fellow workers with a container of acid or some type of caustic liquid. It said the enraged worker tossed the lid open and flung the contents on his fellow workers, dumping the rudiments on himself. Legend states that no immediate deaths ensued, but rather the men suffered gruesome, slower deaths that took several days. A few men perished due to their acid-eaten skin and organs. The man responsible also died. Today, screams and moans of those who were burned by the acid supposedly can still be heard by some if they listen closely while visiting Lock 4 Park. Also, the lock tender's cabin, which is located in the park, may also be haunted by the spirit of the angry worker. Number 3. Franklin Castle. Franklin Castle is reported to be the most haunted house in Ohio. Rumors about the eerie castle began to surface after multiple deaths occurred in the Tiedemann family while living in the mansion. The home was built in 1883 by Haynes Tiedemann, a banker and co-founder of the Union Banking and Savings Company. And let me just add that the house has 4 stories and more than 20 rooms and 80 windows. Now, Haynes allegedly tore down another house on the property where 4 of his children had died. His first wife, Lucia, died inside Franklin Castle in the 1890s. The American businessman would eventually bury 3 more of his children and his mother. Since then, the location has been the site of mysterious hauntings. A family with 6 children called the Romanos had moved into the house, and on the day they moved in, 2 of their children said they encountered a crying girl in white on the 3rd floor. But when Miss Romano investigated, no one was there. Soon, the family started hearing haunting organ music and heavy footsteps. 2 of the older Romano children woke up one night to find something yanking the blankets off their bed, and Miss Romano once awoke to find herself screaming on her bedroom floor with an unseen presence screaming beside her. A priest advised the Romanos to move out, and in 1974 they did. But the hauntings didn't stop when the Romanos left. From there, the house was sold again and again and again. Each new occupant reported strange occurrences like passing through odd vapors, hearing a child crying, or seeing a woman in black standing in the window. Since reports of hauntings at Franklin's Castle increased, many turned their suspicions onto its original owner. Number 2. Sister Sentry House Restaurant. Now a restaurant, this building has seen a lot in the past. It was built in 1870 and has been home to several businesses in historic Canal Fulton throughout the years. It currently houses a family-owned restaurant, but was most notably home to a crematorium, which was located in the basement back in the early 1900s. I mean, since this place was once filled with dead people, it's no shock that it's haunted. There have been rumors of shadow people, a poltergeist in the kitchen, ghostly ladies in the basement, the entrance to an old tunnel, and even an unusual room that makes people a bit dizzy. The food, though, seems to be great, as the restaurant has a 4.6 star rating, so if you want to see some ghosts and have a great meal, I suggest you check this place out. And coming in at number 1, the Ohio State Reformatory. The Ohio State Reformatory opened its doors on September 15, 1896 to its first 150 offenders. These prisoners were brought by train from Columbus and put immediately to work on the prison sewer system and the 25-foot stone walls surrounding the complex. The Reformatory remained in full operation until December 1990, when it was closed via federal court order as a result of a prisoner's class action suit citing overcrowding and inhumane conditions. For example, in the late 1930s, a riot broke out in the East Cell Block. The guards condemned 120 rioters to share 12 solitary confinement cells for 1 week without food or water. This punishment drove many to the brink of madness and death. During its 94 years as a working prison, 154,000 inmates passed through the gates of the Ohio State Reformatory. Many died of diseases like influenza and tuberculosis, some went mad, others ended their lives, and at least one inmate lit himself on fire. Just outside the Reformatory, there are 215 numbered graves. While visiting people have reported being pushed and punched by unseen forces, many claim to feel a chill while on the prison grounds. People have also heard cell doors slam shut and seen dark apparitions. Even the road leading to the Ohio State Reformatory seems to be haunted. Local legend suggests it's the ghost of Phoebe Wise, a notorious hermit and eccentric.
Alright, coming in at number 10, we have the haunted Oprah Winfrey Show. What? The Oprah Winfrey Show is famously filmed in the Windy City near the spot of one of the worst boating disasters of all time. Now, this resulted in the largest loss of life from an incident in the Great Lakes. In 1915, passengers were boarding the SS Eastland, which was docked in the Chicago River. Workers from Hawthorne Works were off to a picnic. It was a full boat, and this caused weight distribution issues, and then the boat listed to one side, rolling. This trapped some passengers below decks, others were crushed by heavy furniture. 844 passengers and 4 crew members died in the disaster. The dead were taken to a nearby armory building which served as an impromptu morgue. Fast forward decades and this building is now a warehouse and a film studio where the Oprah Winfrey Show is filmed. Many members of the show's crew have reported seeing and hearing strange things in the building. There have been reports of screams from the doomed passengers and even some apparition sightings. The most frequently spotted ghost is the Grey Lady, who is often seen stalking the halls. Coming in at number 9, there are 12,000 corpses underneath Lincoln Park. Parks, gotta love them. Green spaces, picnics, lemonade, a few cheeky beers, some banter, frisbee, fun times, and thousands of dead people. Wait, what? Yep, that's right. Rumor has it that Lincoln Park is built on an old cemetery, and surprisingly, this urban legend is true. Between 1843 and 1865, there were 4 different cemeteries in the spot where the public park now is. The city was eyeing up a spot for the park, and after the fire of 1871, they had the perfect excuse to start again. While some bodies were exhumed and moved, around 12,000 remained under the park. When the zoo was built in 1962, bodies were unearthed and reburied. With that many bodies, is there any surprise that there have been a number of ghost sightings in the area? Coming in at number 8, we have the legend of Mrs. O'Leary and the fire that killed 300 people. The Great Fire of Chicago is one of the most horrendous things that happened to the city. 3.3 square miles of city burnt from the 8th to the 10th of October 1871. This also left hundreds of thousands of people without homes. The popular legend blames Mrs. O'Leary, you know the song, Late Last Night. Before she went to bed, Mrs. O'Leary, she hung a lantern in her shed, and then the cow, he kicked it over and he winked at her and said, "It'll be a hot time in the old town tonight," right? You know the score, basically. We all know the score. I'm from England and I know the score. Now the problem is, poor old Mrs. Leary never actually did it. She was a poor Irish Catholic immigrant and was made a scapegoat because of Protestant founders of the US being distrustful of Catholics. Also, there was a lot of anti-Irish racism around the time. Reported by Michael Aaron of the Chicago Tribune, he actually was to blame for fanning the flames on Mrs. O'Leary's reputation. But it was already destroyed because people across the world are still singing songs about it today. She was pardoned by Chicago City Council in 1997, as was the cow, but of course it was far too late for them. Nonetheless, the legend lives on today. Continuing with the Great Fire of Chicago, we have the haunted water tower at number 7. In the fire, legend has it that one brave citizen pumped water from the iconic Chicago water tower to try and help quell the flames. The water tower on Streeterville survived the blaze as a result of the man's actions. He proved himself a hero as he manned the pump lamps instead of fleeing for his life. Then, as the metal structure got hotter and hotter, the flames rose around him. The man knew he was gonna die. Rather than die slowly and painfully, the legend has it that he hung himself from this structure. Legend also has it that sometimes people still see his body hanging through towers upstairs. This has been confirmed by a police officer who saw his body hanging through a window, but then when he went to investigate, there was no one there. Coming in at number 6, we have the Devil of Hull House. Is this the real-life story behind Rosemary's Baby? The story spawned the popular movie, and this could actually be the true-life explanation. The Hull House was a focal spot in the Chicago community. Jane Addams took the building over in the late 1800s and ran it as a woman's shelter. Jane reportedly took in a woman who was heavily pregnant and whose husband had abandoned her. It seems the midwives in Jane's employ would not go near the child after it was born. Why? Because it had a monstrous appearance. The legend states that the baby was born a monster because his father yelled to the heavens in frustration of being given only daughters. He reportedly yelled, "I would rather have the devil in this house than have another daughter." What a man. Jane kept that baby a secret, but one day, 3 Italian women burst into the house and demanded to see the devil baby. They said they knew a baby had been born with pointed ears, a tail, and cloven hooves. The woman caused such a fuss and would not leave until forcibly removed. Then, the locals started talking. Soon a crowd appeared at the house and people wanted to get a look at the child. The mystery was never resolved, but there have been many whispers of hauntings at the house. Some people report seeing the devil's face at the window of the house to this day. Coming into number 3, we have the knocking ghosts of Flight 191. On the 25th of May 1979, American Airlines Flight 191 crashed moments after takeoff from Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. 258 passengers and 13 crew were killed, as were 2 people on the ground. This insane death toll makes it the worst aviation accident in the United States history. Just as the jet was beginning its takeoff rotation, the left engine separated from the left wing and smashed into the runway, severing hydraulic fluid lines. As the plane began to climb, the damaged left side of the plane produced less lift and caused the plane to roll. This then made the plane crash into an open field by the airport, killing everyone on board. Now, the pictures from the aftermath are truly harrowing indeed. Debris was hurled into nearby trailer parks, which destroyed 5 trailers, but that wasn't all the trailer park would see of the crash. As the years went on, people living at the trailer park have reported frantic knocks at their door, only to open them and find that there's nobody there. One resident reported coming across a worried man who claimed he needed to make a connection. Another man in the area was walking his dog when he came across a man in a suit that smelled of gasoline. He told him that he needed to make an emergency call. Coming into number 2, we have the Italian Bride. Mount Carmel Cemetery is best known for being the final resting place of Al Capone and a number of his gangster cronies. Also resident in the cemetery is the much famed and deeply mysterious Italian bride. The bride wasn't actually a bride at all. She was a young woman named Giulia Baccola. Unfortunately, she died aged 29 in childbirth in 1921. Now, she was reportedly buried in her wedding dress, which sparked her urban legend name. Following her death, her mother had a string of wild and vivid dreams that her daughter was not dead. Giulia would tell her that she was alive and she needed her help. She had to come to the cemetery and save her. Finally, 6 years after her daughter's death, the dreams got too much for Giulia's mother, who had her daughter's body exhumed. When the casket was opened, Giulia's body had not decayed one bit since the day she was buried. Creepily, on her gravestone, there's a picture of her body after she was exhumed, and yeah, she does look pretty freshly dead, which really sometimes is the best a gal can hope for.
Number 10. The Bisman Building. The Bisman Building was built in 1886, and fun fact, the film Shawshank Redemption used this place as a filming location. If you have seen the film, the building is used as the entrance to the Brewer Hotel, where Brooks and Red stayed after they were paroled from Shawshank. The real building, though, is haunted. While here, many people experience a feeling of dread and sadness, particularly on the 3rd floor. Many people also report an overwhelming sensation of darkness when on this floor, so if I were you, I would just stay away from the 3rd floor in general. Disembodied footsteps, voices, being poked and pushed, black shadows, and dark figures caught in images seems to be something that happens a lot. Spirits of a young girl Ruthie, her aunt, and the spirit of a retired worker who died in an accident before leaving the building are 3 identified spirits that stay here. In past investigations here, investigators have received audible responses to their questions. Yep, the ghosts spoke to them. One piece of audio evidence was when an investigator asked if they could speak to Ruthie, and a voice was caught saying, "Is Ruthie here?" In addition to Ruthie, people have witnessed the spirit of a woman throughout the upper floors, people in Victorian clothing, and the sounds of people working. Number 9. Staley Road. Sometime in the early 1800s, pioneer John Wrench used the services of 3 Staley brothers to build a flour mill. The finished structure was to become the first double-wheeled mill in Ohio. The business flourished, and after several years, John had made enough money to retire and ended up selling his mill to Elias Staley. The mill was then passed down to his brother Andrew and continued to produce flour until 1905. Today, the mill is still standing, and on Staley Road, named for the brothers, winds its way past and through the woods. It has become something of a rite of passage for local teens to drive this road at night to show how brave they are. It's been said that Old Man Staley went on a rampage, ending the lives of many, and is now haunting the road. Motorists say that they often experience unexplained car trouble, and some have even seen Staley's ghost standing next to or even lying in the road. Number 8. The Golden Lamb. As the oldest hotel in Ohio, the Golden Lamb has seen more than its share of famous guests, including Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, Daniel Webster, and 12 American presidents. Yeah. 12. It's fantastic, but there's also been death and tragedy in the hotel. Guests have cited a girl who may be Sarah Stubbs, the niece of the hotel manager in the 1800s, or possibly Eliza Clay, a girl who died of a high fever at the hotel in 1825. The ghost of Charles R. Sherman, an Ohio Supreme Court justice who died at the inn in 1929, is said to appear in the hallways as a gray, gaunt man and conjures the smell of cigar smoke. Charles's death left his wife and 11 children, including Civil War General William T. Sherman, penniless. As a result, most of his children were put up for adoption, and some say the guilt of his family's demise keeps his spirit at the inn. Number 7. Moonville Tunnel. Located deep in the woods, the tunnel is framed by a faded stone archway covered in moss. The tunnel itself is long and extremely dark. It's actually an out-of-work stretch of railroad track that leads to an old coal mining town. If you're brave enough to venture through it, you might see the ghost of Frank Lawhead, an unlucky train conductor who met his end in a head-on collision with another train. Visitors in the area have taken photos with cameras or phones, only to look back at them later and notice the pale figure of a man they didn't see before, or phantom train lights blazing at the end of the tunnel. It's also said if you listen carefully, inhale deeply, and blink intermittently, you may encounter spirits from another time. The piercing whistle of a train rounding a curve, the smell of lavender wafting from a woman in an old-fashioned dress, or even the glow of gaslit lantern illuminating the face of the weathered brakeman. So that's fun. Number 6. The Buxton Inn. The Buxton Inn was built by Orrin Granger in 1812 as an inn and tavern, and it also served as Granville's first post office and as a stagecoach stop. I'm just gonna say it, this place is haunted. The first ghost spotted in the Buxton Inn was the first owner, Orrin. Other ghosts include the Lady in Blue, rumored to be the former innkeeper Ethel Bonnie Bonnell, Major Buxton, whom the inn was named, and even a phantom cat seen slinking along the halls. There's been strange activity like footsteps and doors opening on their own reported in the inn's basement, where stagecoach drivers would often stay during their stopovers in the past. However, the ghosts just don't stay in the basement. Oh no. Rooms 7 and 9 are said to be the strongest places for activity, with apparitions appearing. One guest even reported a ghost cat showing up to cuddle and purr in the middle of the night, which, like, Aw, that's so cute. Guests have reported strange phenomenon throughout the hotel though, like their names being called out and invisible footsteps. I would not want to sleep there. Number 5. Woods surrounding London. Okay, again, not London, England, but London, Ohio. Deep inside these woods sits an old abandoned barn that is so rotted away it is practically melded back into the trees. It's rumored that ghosts like to spend some time here. If you ask anyone from the area, they'll tell you that these woods are haunted. According to legend, a family of 5 was traveling through the woods in the late 1890s when they were stopped and had their lives ended by a band of thieves. Those brave enough to wander through the woods of London at night have reported hearing gunshots and disembodied screaming. Others have felt a sudden drop in temperature before seeing a strange white mist hanging in the trees. Let me just say, it's a no for me. Number 4. Ridge's Asylum. Ridge's Asylum originally opened in 1874 and was known as the Athens Asylum for the Insane. It had 2 wings, one for female patients and one for the male patients. The most violent patients were housed at the outermost tip of each wing. By the start of the 1900s, the asylum had become dangerously overcrowded, and rumors of inhumane treatment at the hands of the overworked staff were growing. Despite this, it was not officially closed until 1993. Some parts of the building are still in use, while other areas are completely abandoned. One of the scariest places in the building is the outline of a body where Margaret Shrilling died in 1979. She apparently got lost in the disused part of the hospital in the winter of 1978-79 and was not found for more than a month. When the corpse was eventually removed, it left a stain that could never be washed away, which just makes me gag thinking about it, but imagine the smell, like, ew. Ugh. She is one of the many ghosts who is said to walk the asylum at night. Strange figures have been seen roaming around the old floors. Others have heard disembodied voices, footsteps, and screaming. Most appealing to imagination is the basement. Some claim severely disabled patients were kept on chains in dungeon-like places. Some say they've even heard the chains being pulled. Oh, and there's also a cemetery on the grounds which holds over 1,930 bodies. Of those, 700 women and 959 men lay under the headstones marked with only a number, which is sad. Number 3. Bobby Macky's. Built in 1850, Bobby Macky's is said to be the most haunted nightclub in America. When it was first built, the building served as a slaughterhouse and meat packing facility. The standard for most slaughterhouses of its day, the facility featured a well to collect the runoff of animal blood, innards, and other waste. If that image wasn't icky enough, there have also been several deaths in and around the club throughout the years. The place harbors energy so dark that a portal to hell is rumored to swirl somewhere within its basement. There is strange, suffocating heat, a trash can once flew through the air, and the apparition of a man with a handlebar mustache appears in the mirror. I would not want to get anywhere near that place ever. Number 2. Licking County Jail. Originally opened in 1889, the Licking County Jail is now home to only prisoners serving afterlife sentences. It contains stacks of cramped, grimy cells lining its dimly lit halls. Since being put out of commission, the jail has become a notoriously haunted hotspot. While it was operating, a total of 3 sheriffs and 19 inmates died on the premise. If you make your way to Licking County Jail, it's said you should peer between the cell bars as figures of prisoners are said to peer back. Visitors have reported hearing cell doors slamming, being touched, whispering in your ear, whistles, the sound of footsteps, some of those being what seems residual, the jingling of keys, screams, and moaning, as well as seeing strange light anomalies, full shadow figures, and photos with unexpected images in them. That sounds absolutely terrifying, and I would not want to go there. And coming in at number 1 is Seville Rectory. The Seville Rectory is a historical building that once served as the home for priests of Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church. Priests of questionable moral character were rumored to live here, if you know what I mean, including a man who was moved around considerably before retiring from the priesthood, leaving some to believe the church was covering up his tendency of mistreating animals. His fellow priests later confessed to hearing strange sounds sounds coming from his bedroom and feeling uneasy in his presence. As the alleged site of the mistreatment, it's no shock that the place has some wicked demonic energy. Reports detail strange howling cries and deep scratches appearing in the flesh of workers. The current owner of the building, Terry Scott, even claimed that she was pushed by an invisible force. The presence was so evil that a priest was called in to perform an exorcism, but his efforts did little to keep the demonic energy at bay, and whatever monster lurked in there still remains, and I would not want to mess with it.